Hello, my name is Alexis Price, and I'm a senior here at Mount St. Mary's University, and this is my senior research project on the pronunciation effect on correct word recognition. The purpose of this paper is to evaluate the extent to which pronunciation effects are present in word recall between reading aloud and reading silently. Results were found to be non-significant. Participants were presented a list of words and were instructed to read aloud or read silently. Participants were instructed to recall words in whatever order they wanted. Experimenters measured for correct word recall. Elements from previous research were considered when devising this experiment. Finding ways to increase recognition of study words will be useful to society. Previous research has suggested that reading aloud is beneficial for word recognition. The purpose of this study is to further these efforts by looking at the effects of reading aloud or reading silently on word recognition. The production effect is a difference in memory favoring words read aloud when compared with words read silently. A meta-analysis is a quantitative study used to assess results of previous research to make a conclusion about a specific body of research. Fawcett ran a meta-analysis to find evidence for and against the production effect only in between subject designs. A search of online resources, such as Google Scholar and PsycInfo, was conducted. Keywords such as produce, say, read, and memory were used to find articles containing only between subject comparisons that involved the production effect. Fawcett found no evidence of heterogeneity. Any variable could be due to sample error, and most comparisons failed to reach significance. Fawcett did find that participants were more sensitive to words read aloud than read silently. Another interesting experiment was ran to test whether reading aloud would yield fewer false recognition responses among related lure items compared to hearing words. Related lure items are words that sound like they would fit with other presented words. They are meant to trip participants up when recalling. Words were displayed for 1.5 seconds with a space of 1.5 seconds in between each word. This study consisted of 24 target controls, 16 related lures, and 8 unrelated lures. Results stated that unrelated lures were incorrectly recognized less often in the say condition compared to the hear condition. Participants in the say condition were able to discriminate between target controls and unrelated lures better than those in the hear condition. Foreign emphasizes that words which are read aloud will yield a higher recognition rate than other productions such as mouthing, typing, writing, and even drawing. Mouthing does not produce higher recognition rates as saying the words does. This leads researchers to believe that the actual act of speaking is part of the pronunciation effect. Based on previous research, I hypothesized that participants in the read aloud condition will exhibit an increased rate of word recognition compared to those who are in the read silent condition. The participants for this study consisted of 10 undergraduate students from Mount St. Mary's University, 9 females, and 1 male. Participation was voluntary, and participants were offered no credit towards their class. The sample is drawn using random sampling. Materials consisted of PowerPoint, the Thorndike Lure count, and Zoom meetings. The procedure. 15 words with 5 letters were selected from the Thorndike Lure count. They were then organized on a PowerPoint with only 1 word presented on each slide. Words were size 44 and typed in black Times New Roman text on a white background. Words were presented for 2 seconds before directly moving to the next. There were 5 participants in the loud condition and 5 participants in the silent condition. Each participant was tested independently and were told that having their video on was optional. Informed consent was presented first. Participants were instructed to give a thumbs-up reaction on Zoom meetings after they read and understood the informed consent. After confirmation, there was a slide that told the participants the experiment was starting now. The next slide after that was the instructions. The instructions were presented for 1 minute. At the end of the 15 words, a slide informed participants that they would have 45 seconds to recall the words. Participants typed the words that they recalled into the Zoom chat and were thanked for their participation. An independent samples t-test was used to test for significance. There was no significant effect between reading aloud, which had a mean of 7.8 and a standard deviation of 1.10, and reading silently, which had a mean of 7.0 and a standard deviation of 1.41. The t-test showed that there was no significance, as the p-value was 0.35, and there was an effect size of 0.3, which is a moderate effect size. And to the right is a photo of my graph, which I used to display the difference between the groups. The small sample size attributed to the experiment yielding non-significant results. The effect size for the experiment was 0.632. This is a moderate effect size. The effect size is a measurement of the strength of a relationship between two variables. This moderate effect size is in the favor of the hypothesis, suggesting that if the sample size was larger, significance could have been found for reading aloud. For future research, I would suggest trying to get at least 30 participants for each group to accurately represent the pronunciation effect. Limitations of this study include that all participants were instructed to mute their microphones before beginning the experiment. Participants were also not required to turn on their video camera. Experimenters could not be sure that participants in the loud condition read the words aloud. For future research, I would suggest experimenters should require participants to have their microphones unmuted, and this will be able to ensure that participants are following instructions for their allotted condition. Another limitation of the study is the lack of rehearsal time in between words. This can contribute to the hypothesis not being supported. Dodson and Schachter gave 1.5 seconds between each word, and participants in this study did not receive any rehearsal time. For future research, I would suggest giving participants at least 1 second of rehearsal time in between words, so participants were not given enough time to encode words into memory. Future research. Next research of the production effect should focus on creating an experiment where the production effect can be reliably replicated. As stated before, for future research, researchers should try to manipulate rehearsal time, and a new variable they could play with is age or gender. Thank you to all who participated in my experiment, and thank you to Mount St. Mary's and Dr. Robert Kiefer for being my mentor and allowing this research to be conducted.